think we should get started because we've got a huge program today with a lot of people that I'm just going to mention by name now. And by the way, this is our last session for the season. So I just want to say thank you, and I'll say it again, to everybody who participated. This has been some of the best work we've ever done, I think, and we really appreciate you being here to participate and to add your opinions and stuff. It's really been wonderful. So anyway, I think next time we're going to do a series on the latent reservoir. So I think it's going to be very interesting. Rafe has agreed to do a video, so we'll all know what we're talking about. I think it's going to be a really good series, and I'm going to be contacting a bunch of you all to help us again. So I hope people understand this. So
someone needs to mute.
Oh, mute that missile.
There we go. There we go. Well, that's...
Almost is waiting for V2 Schneider to come on, Michael. Anyway, so today we have with us Waheedah, Nina, Moisés, Shekinah. Jeff Taylor is going to help me facilitate, and Jeff Barry, who has been waiting all these sessions to be on a panel. He's one of the collaborators from CRISPR, Jeff Taylor from BRID, and myself and Michael Luella from DARE. Michael is also on the RIDCAB. So anyway, we decided on our call, our little pre-call, that we would let everybody make their own intros to save time and to actually tell people what they wanted them to know. So today we're going to be talking about where do we go from here. We've had 6 sessions on all sorts of long-term survivor and lifetime survivor issues from different community members. And we're going to try and tie it up with a nice bow today to talk about issues from each of the communities and you know, some recommendations for going forward in the future. Now, we've picked the people that we've picked because they have great ties to so many different communities. They're not going to be speaking for the community, but they're going to be speaking about what they've learned and what they know as members and advocates for the different communities. So who wants to go first? How about Waheedah?
Good morning, good afternoon to everyone here. My name is Waheedah Shabazz-El. My pronouns are she and her. I'm based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I would like to let you know that I've been working in cure research from the time I got diagnosed back in 2003. I joined the CFARB CAB at the University of Penn. And then right after the International AIDS Conference 2016, I was able to be the chair of the BEAT Cure CAB, the Delaney Collaborative here in Philadelphia with the Wistar Institute. I am of a certain age. I'll tell you, I'm 70 years old. I have a slew of grandchildren and a bunch of grandchildren, and my grandchildren think that all grown-ups have HIV. That's how much I've talked about it and stuff with my family, that I asked them, do you think you know any other grown-ups with HIV besides your grandmother? And my grandson says, yes, all the grown-ups have it. Mm-hmm. So when they see us taking pills, they think everybody's taking pills because all the grown-ups have HIV. So I'm just happy to be here to talk about what I've heard in my community, in several communities, Black communities, women, seniors. So I'm representing a lot of communities, but not totally representing. I'm giving you my opinion from what I'm hearing from a number of communities where I'm intersecting. And I will pass it off back to you, Linda, or should I pass it to someone?
Well, why don't you give us some thoughts about what you think about this topic? And before you do that, I see Dawn, who I yes. see her in the list. So she's going to hopefully have some words of wisdom for us as well. But Dawn, can you raise your hand with the, oh, there she's there now. Great, yep. Great. Okay, I'm sorry. I just didn't see you, so I didn't think you were there. That's why I looked at the list to check. Well, go ahead, Waheedah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, one of the things I want to say, well, it's good that people over 70 are being recruited for cure research. I think that's a good thing. Women are being recruited for cure research because for so long, people who were over a certain age, and women were not included in a lot of research, which has caused a lot of mistrust, and particularly in Black communities. We've had a lot of mistrust around medical, but I want to say that one of the things that makes Black people nervous is a lot of times we go to providers who are so much younger than us, so much more privileged than we are. And so that right there kind of sets up a unequal like situation, and people don't feel as open to be involved, So but one of the benefits of cure research is that, or any research, is that we're not the quote unquote guinea pigs. If we're not at the table, someone said that they don't want to be at the table, they want to be in the kitchen, they want to be making recipes, they want to be stirring up the whole thing. But for us to be invited in, and now there's an olive, I don't want to say an olive branch being offered, that it is our opportunity to be meaningfully involved. So I don't want to like come on and just talk about all the mistrust and all the bad things, because there's some good research coming out, and there's a lot of good things, reasons why people who are HIV positive and HIV negative can help move the research along, can help in stigma around HIV. And I have learned that even from the few people who have received the cure, I was talking to Adam recently. He was in Philadelphia, and he was just talking about there's still so much stigma. Even he's the guy, he says stigma because he did get the cure, right? So there's also a fear of people losing their benefits, particularly people who are older. Maybe they're not 65, so maybe they're not able to get a federal retirement benefit. So maybe they're on SSI or SSDI, and if they become a person who's able to receive the cure, there's some fear about how they're going to be able to financially provide for themselves. Some people may have not worked in a while. So there's a lot of things, and then, like I said, as a woman who's postmenopausal, I'm just learning now that there are some changes around me having less estrogen as I go through menopause. That there are there's some benefits to cure research for me, as I have less estrogen. It's a benefit to women. So that's new, because those kind of studies just weren't done for us. I remember once I'm going to say this, I'm going to pass it on. I was at John Hopkins years ago, and I had the smallest person in the room, who was a woman. She was about 4'11", about the same height as me. I asked her to come to the stage, and I asked the biggest person in the room, who must have been like 6'4". I asked him to come to the stage, and I had them stand side by side. And I remember saying to everybody, these people take the same amount of medication, right? Because there was no difference. Everybody was getting the same dosage. They were taking the same dosage. And I remember when I was younger, they would always ask you, how much did you weigh? And they would prescribe you dosages according to how much you weigh. So we've come a long way from then, because now we're actually looking at people's weight, we're looking at people's age, we're looking at people's gender. So we're having more of an inclusion criteria for us to be engaged in the cure research. We're at the beginning of the end, right, of HIV. And for those of us who are able to be a part of this research, the more people that we get involved, the sooner we'll get the answers to the questions that we need, and we can start rolling this out. So, do you think I've said enough, Linda? You want me to
You
go
made a lot
on?
of great points. Yeah, excellent points. How about
Okay,
you, Jeff? I'm going to go across my screen here like I see you all. And this way you'll be second instead of poor Jeff. He's so quiet and reserved. We always he always
So
ends up to
I've
be
seen,
last. Not today, my man.
not today. And thank you so much, Linda. And thanks, Waheedah, for setting the stage. So I'm Jeff Berry. I am a long-term survivor of HIV. I am from Chicago. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm the executive director of the Reunion Project, Alliance of Long-Term Survivors of HIV. And so really happy to be here. I mean, this series has been phenomenal. I've learned so much from all the different webinars in this series, all the amazing folks who have contributed. As Linda mentioned, I'm also chair of the CRISPR for Cure Collaboratory. And so, I think a lot of the issues that we've been talking about are universal, and they're cross-cutting across all different groups, be it age, all, ethnicity, race, gender, all the different, subgroups, lifetime survivors, long-term survivors. There's a lot of universal issues when it comes to research and HIV cure research in particular. I also, think there's obviously some differences. And so that's why we had these separate, there's some, issues that are pertinent to each subpopulation. And so when we think about long-term survivors, I think many of us have participated in HIV research over the years. And I think it's going to be important to be able to share those stories of participating in cure research to help with, if you will, with the knowledge transfer of for people who are going to be participating in cure research down the road. I think, there's some things we can think about short term, and then I think also we can think about long term. I think in the immediate term, some of the advocacy work that's happening right now around, raising the age limit on these studies and not having these automatic cutoffs at 65 is really important. I think some of that's happening because we just have these kind of cookie cutter templates for researchers use for studies where, 18 to 65, and that's just kind of copied and pasted into a protocol when it doesn't really need to be. And so we need to look at, and I know there's advocacy happening around that now. And so that's great to allow older people who may be long-term survivors like me. I'm at that 65, I just hit that this year. So, to be able to participate in these cure studies, because I think there's a lot of sense of altruism amongst older folks like me who are long-term survivors. We may have a lot of resources that allow us to participate readily in cure research. We may have a sense of altruism. We may have time on our hands, right? But then there's also older adults, long-term survivors who don't have those resources, who don't have the privilege, and how do we bridge that gap, right? So how do we transfer that knowledge? How do we help other people who may not be as well resourced to take advantage of these studies, right? Because we need to look at all populations, not just, one population. I think there's going to be instances where in long-term survivors, it may be possible to do analytical treatment interruptions if it's safe, if it makes sense, if there's something that needs to be studied, particularly if these treatment interruptions are short-term. When we think about long-term survivors, I think many are LGBTQ folks like myself who have survived the early years of the epidemic and are now older, and they may not have family or children or support systems in place that and care providers that help them to have access to these clinical studies, make it possible to even get out of the house, to go to a clinical research site to do this study. So I think we need to focus on care, providing care, and culturally competent care, LGBTQ sensitive care in the research study sites as well. And I think, I'll just stop there and just say that again, just really grateful to be here and be part of this discussion, because I think it's going to be so important going forward that we continue these kind of conversations to bring everyone together to hopefully move the needle forward.
That was great, Jeff. When you talked about if people had time to get involved, and about, I don't know, halfway down now, or I don't know how many, 10, 12 comments down, I put a link in the chat that will take you to all the government cabs that are available, including the Martin Delaney cabs for cure research. But there's the ACTG, there's prevention and vaccines and whatever. So take a look at that link, and there's contact information as well. So if you have the time and you're interested in getting involved, I mean, I think that we can use you desperately, because the people that do have time and are ready, willing, and able are less and less every year. So it's really important to continue to fill these ranks.
I just put it in the chat again. It's right
Okay,
there.
I mean, it's in there now. Should I do it again?
No, I just did it right now so people can see it.
Oh,
Right there.
okay. Oh, great. 'Cause I can see it now. Great. All right. Thank you, Michael. Always on the job. All right, Shekinah, what would you like to tell us about yourself and your community?
Thank you, Linda. Hi, everyone. Shekinah Rose. My pronouns I use are she, her, hers, and accomplice. I currently reside in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm a 38-year plus thriver survivor of HIV/AIDS. It's been like a long journey, as many of us in this room, and I'm really happy to be here today to share a little bit about what's going on in our community. I am a member of Positively Trans National Advisory Board, as well as Positive Women's Network USA and Pennsylvania chapter. I'm involved in several Rust Belt CFAR groups here in the local area. And one of the Rust Belt CFARs I'm involved in is in the Sex and Gender Advisory Scientific Working Group. And in that group, we have the real privilege to be working with many different providers and researchers across America, looking at HIV, looking at sex, looking at gender, looking at the intersectionality of everything that like comes into the world of HIV. And so over this last year, I've really kind of found it quite fascinating to hear so many different points of view around the research that's being done here in America on, not just all people, and the issues around our trans community are certainly being uplifted, and I'm grateful for that, but we certainly have a little bit further to go. And when I say a little bit further to go, I'm talking about language. So often in research spaces, language is something that hasn't quite caught up. Researchers are very involved in their work, and it limits our ability to be at the table, quite honestly. And so for many BIPOC people, it's a barrier to being at the table. And I know I've certainly have spoken at length across various platforms around the importance of language. And, if we want to be able to have all people at the table, it's important to recognize language as a vehicle to get us all there. So another area that I'd like to talk about is, and Waheedah kind of covered it a little bit, was, the criteria in which we find ourselves being able to be included in research. So many of the presentations that I've been involved with this last year, women are excluded entirely, for the most part, out of research, whether it's clinical or drug. And the exclusion criteria is so small that many of us aren't able to actually be a part of studies. So there's a growing movement for researchers, specifically coming out of South Africa, that was very encouraging to be recognizing the importance of stepping out of what the outcome might look like, to actually looking at who the people are that we're wanting to actually do research on. So I'm encouraged by that recent progress. Over the weekend, I learned at the Sixth National Transgender Health Conference that Merck is actually looking at trying to be a change maker in that they will be looking at requiring researchers to use gender neutral language. And so the idea is that, by having a top-down approach, researchers will begin to use language that is more appropriate, which is really a requirement. And it's my hope that they certainly are able to easily adopt that. All of us here also recognize nothing about us without us. So many of us have been advocating for the same thing for years. So the fact that it is coming from a pharmaceutical company, I think we all understand that's not necessarily about us, for us. So I think that'll be it for now, and I'm just glad to be here today.
Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much for those comments. We've been fighting a language battle ourselves, so that's something that we all have in common. How about Nina?
Greetings,
West Coast
everyone.
today.
My name's Nina Martinez. Apologies, I am on California time because this is supposed to be my vacation. But I regularly live in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a lifetime survivor, having lived with HIV for all of 6 weeks of my life. I'm 40 years old. Today is the 10th anniversary of the HIV Organ Policy Equity Act of 2013, which is the law that legalized transplants between people with HIV. So people have been able to register their donation decision just like anyone else for 10 years now. So I just want to put that in there. I serve on the RID HIV CAB, and I have also participated in the RID HIV clinical study. So pardon me, my brain is relaxed because I am relaxed, but I guess I want to, if I am allowed to be spicy, I just want to first
Go girl.
First and foremost say that aging in this country is a privilege, period. I do hear a lot of conversations focusing on chronological age, and it would be my hope to see someday more research studies focusing on duration of HIV infection, because age is commonly factored into all the predictive models and things like that. So chronological age is never going to go away, but not everyone gets to live to see the age of 60 or 70, especially if you're not a white, cisgender, heterosexual person in this country. So, what about the rest of us that also have data to contribute who may not survive to that chronological age? I'm 40 years old. I never expected to see 40. I would say that I'm 15 years past my expiration date. I do not have any expectations of seeing 50, which is when apparently I'm considered aging with HIV, despite having it for all of my life. I know my community feels the same way. I think we sort of made that very clear point at the U.S. Conference on HIV and AIDS in September. Initially, when the group invited me to come and stand up there with them, I saw their run of show. There was no mention of aging with HIV, and I thought that was really a missed opportunity, because having been diagnosed with osteopenia at 33, having the expectation of having early menopause before I even hit 45 or 50, I don't think those conversations are being had. So I'm going to be the first one to go ahead and just keep pushing that point, because again, if you're not a white, cisgendered, heterosexual person, getting to 50 is a privilege. So I just going to drive that point home. And I agree with the whole copy and pasted of criteria. A lot of them don't make sense. And whenever somebody says, you know, the listed criteria say I'm not eligible, I'm always the first one to tell them, just ask the principal investigator anyway. They can always modify their protocols and amend them to have you included. I've had 2 studies, I believe, modified to facilitate my participation because, again, women are not as represented. Hispanics are not, only 1% of Hispanics participate in clinical trials. I was meant to represent a younger demographic, having participated in research at the age of 19. And the RID HIV study was one of my last ones because I didn't have a cure study in my little portfolio. So I wanted to make sure that I had some representation in there. And then moving forward, I think I'll still participate in research, but I know a lot of folks who have had HIV throughout their whole life, they gave as children. They were in studies as children. I'm not clear on how many studies I was in as a kid because I was too young to understand. But, you know, now that we've reached the age of 40, it's when can I start living for me now and not the cause and this expectation of giving. Not to say I'm not happy to be with you all here today. But to not have had a life outside of HIV when it's literally been your whole life, I think, besides the fact that a lot of people think we don't exist anymore because we all died, and a lot of us did, but some of us are still here, and it's just that focus on chronological age at 50 really does divide us when it's a lot of us lifetime survivors have been living with this disease just as long as you have, and we just don't yet have the privilege of reaching the age of 50. I know that my community is not optimistic in terms of if a cure is found that we would be able to receive it, but we see that with HIV all the time, the inequities that drive the disparities. Every new innovation is always going to one privileged group first and never really circles back to the rest of them. So we do have some kind of pessimism, and also, again, because we don't see ourselves reflected in the research. And we think we have a lot to offer because we've been living with it for such a long time. And those of us who are fortunate to still be alive, there's a reason for that. And we would love for people to study that, but there's just not any focus or prioritization of that. So that's my 2 cents.
That was 5 cents.
That was $1.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much, Nina. And how about Moisés? It's so good to see you.
I am very happy to be here. My apologies for the voice. It's that allergy fall thing. So I've been living with HIV for a very long time. I consider myself also a long-term survivor. I found out in 1986. And, you know, I went through the whole cycle of being to have AIDS and have very few T cells, and then having the medications and come back and be healthier again. But one thing that I have some thoughts about how important is for us to talk about long-term survivor, issues of aging with HIV, and issues of cure. As we all know, you know, we have the era of the viral suppression, in which, because of the medications that we got, that we advocated for, we have been able to live a relatively healthy life for a little while. But the narrative that has been built around this is that, you know, everything, when you hear the mainstream, is like everything is good now, right? People are living with their meds. But what people need to understand now is that now it's the age of aging with HIV is not the same time as being virally suppressed. You have to keep it. But as we are aging now, we are discovering that there are very important issues regarding our health and regarding our care that we need to be aware of, we need to be educated about, and we need to educate also our providers. Multiple comorbidities, early aging. I mean, it's like I get like a little bit of deja vu. At that time, I don't know how many of you went through that period of opportunistic infections and, having to take medicine to prevent PCP, to prevent MAC. So somehow this whole aging feel a little bit like that, right? Like we need to look at these comorbidities and understand that we need to take them seriously. Obviously, this is going to transform our care, and we will have to pay more attention to the effect of these comorbidities in our health and in our survival. But I think that we're building the narrative of aging with HIV. We're the first cohort. We are building that narrative now. And the importance of these seminars this webinar is that we need to include the narrative of cure within the narrative of aging. Like we need to make that intrinsic part of each other, because even though we're aging, we're still living, and we still would like to have the hope to look at a cure in our lifetime. We don't know if that's going to happen, but our participation in the studies, being as a subject or being as an advocate, is going to have an impact in how the cure gets developed. So it's very important that we continue that work and that we look at the narrative that we're building, so we can make sure that not only us can have a benefit, but the generations that are coming, right, can have in their narrative, see that we help build the narrative of aging within the narrative of the cure. Does that make sense? Like how that is going to affect those that are coming behind us. But all that sounds nice and you said nice and dandy, but that another thoughts that I have was also thinking about communities of color and the health disparities that we live in, and that we may have the opportunity, some of us that have some privilege of having health insurance, having a job, but there are other people that struggle. And the health disparities is not only about the struggle of the people, but it's also about how the system has been built. And, it doesn't respond necessarily the same to the white population or the African-American or the Latino. So we need to keep also looking at health disparities, because we want to make sure that somehow in this endeavor of a cure, those health disparities are mitigated, or that the system that is built doesn't, we put it right there and we make sure it's integrated and it's not an afterthought. I was also asked to talk a little bit about the Latino community. This is my community. And I wanted to just bring the point that, the Latino community goes through the same kind of challenges that other communities of color go in terms of social determinants of health, lack of education, lack of, transportation, food security. All those issues also affect immigration specifically also. But also there is the language justice issue that it's now getting momentum. That is very important, and it does relate to the work that we do as advocates in CURE, or as we participate in the development of protocols. Language justice is not that we're going to do in a favor to someone to understand. It's the right of the person that speaks another language to understand in the language that they understand it better, right? Any issue related to joining a protocol, to, being part of the informed consent. And it's very important. Imagine if you could not, as an English speaking, you were in a other country that they have another language. There is, in all my years speaking two languages, I have discovered how even now, sometimes I think I understood something one way, and then I found out it was in a different way because of how my language structures are. They're very different in your brain. So I wanted to bring that up for us to keep in mind that. And I think those are my thoughts, Linda.
Oh, that was excellent, Moisés. Thank you so much for touching on so many important things. And how about old Jeff Taylor? He's done so much
Jeff
work in this
Taylor.
arena. Yeah. I think you should have a chance to speak about this too, my dear.
Okay, I hadn't planned to, but sure. Yeah, I've had a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm a long-term survivor myself. I've been living with HIV for 41 or 42 years now, and have been involved in research advocacy from the beginning. Getting involved in the first AZT trials as a desperate bid to get access to treatment to stay alive, and I drank the Kool-Aid, became a believer in research, and have been kind of promoting it ever since, and had the privilege of having privilege and being able to leverage that to do this work. I've been on long-term disability for most of that time, and because I had the luxury of having a long-term disability policy, I was able to do this work for all this time. And I realize many don't, and many can't continue to do that. Many have to go back to work at our age. And so I think that's there are a lot of the social determinants, and we need to keep those in mind as we deal with this population. Another thing that I think gets under recognized is the PTSD we all suffer, having been through this epidemic together. Lifetime survivors, long-term survivors, even HIV negative folks who watched their entire communities get decimated and cared for loved ones. I think we all bear this, and so we need to keep that in mind and be kind to ourselves and to each other as we fight the fight. We talk about language and all the things we need to be fighting for and against, and we need to be fighting for our mental health as well. And I think that participant experience is really important in this. We've talked around this in terms of like language, inclusion criteria, seeing yourself, being seen and heard, seeing people like yourselves in the research community, right? So you think that have some expectation that they see you and your issues and are addressing those. And so I think an important part of cure research that we need to also, that hasn't been mentioned yet, is socio-behavioral research that looks at all those issues. So what's the experience of the trial participant? If we're studying a new intervention, how does that affect their quality of life? Sure, they may be undetectable, but if they're on some nasty cancer drug that makes them feel miserable, is that any better than one pill once a day? So, we've talked about these calls, and Corinne Dubé has been on them before. She's kind of the preeminent socio-behavioral research in the cure space and has done a lot of this work. She talks about target product profiles, which is a marketing term, right? What do you want to see in, a widget that they're trying to sell you, or the next iPhone or whatever. It's the same thing in HIV treatment. We've got, or HIV cure rather, we've got really good treatments, one pill once a day. We're moving to injections every 2 months, every 6 months. So we need, the bar is really high. And, we look at the trials coming down the pike right now, and they're really intensive. And some of it is for research, they're testing various things, going places you wouldn't expect them to go to look to see if there's HIV hiding in your gut in various places. But at the end of the day, if it requires lots of infusions, some of the gene therapy studies mean you go into the hospital and do all these things. We need to be asking people, are they willing to go through this? Is it really worth it for them when you could just take one pill once a day? So I think that whole experience of the participant and the person living with HIV, it should be first and foremost in how we do this on all levels. So I'll stop there. Thanks, Linda.
All right. Great, my dear friend. And Dawn, last but not least, I've known you for so long. When you first came in, and look at you now with that beautiful gray hair, still looking beautiful and still kicking ass. What do you got to tell us, my lady?
Well, first of all, I think I have to acknowledge the privilege of being the last one on the panel, because everybody's had such important things to say, and it's made my job really pretty easy. Like most, I guess, everyone on this panel, I've been living with HIV for 35 years, and, started that journey as a 19-year-old back in the 80s. So it's been an extraordinary one, like all of yours. And when I think about cure and research, I think that at its very core, we're dealing with trust. We're dealing with the trust related issues across the board, and we have good reason not to be trusting not only the powers that be or the researchers or the science or the systems that many of us have had to rail against for so many years, decades. And so I feel like at some level we have to kind of circle all the way back to that. I was probably in my early 20s. It was probably the early 90s of the last century. And I was talking to a doctor who I saw very briefly. I think this was my last visit with him because I was sort of desperate to believe that a cure was, imminent, that it was coming. And I remember looking at him kind of with, huge eyes and saying, so if I take all my meds and I do everything you're telling me that I need to do, it's 1992. What do you think the chances are that we'll have a cure by the year 2000? And I will never forget his response, because he looked right at me and he kind of knitted his brow and he said, I have good news and bad news. And I said, well, what's your good news and bad news? And he said, well, the good news is I think we probably will have a cure by 2000. And the bad news is I don't know that you'll be here for that. It was one of many horrifying incidences over my, journey. And I'm sure many of you can relate to those kinds of communications. But
if you're not speaking, could you please mute?
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, John.
No, that's okay. And I tell that story because as everyone was talking and I was thinking about PTSD and I was thinking about why we do or don't have the conversations we need to have and why we do or don't get involved or engaged. And it is about language. I see some of that conversation happening in the chat. There's so much wrapped up in just how we engage on the most basic levels and the kinds of things that are said. And when, I was asked to talk a little bit about the experience of the women that I've had the privilege of serving and knowing as an AIDS activist for 30 years. And so often it's not the big things, it's the little things. It's I fondly refer to them sometimes as the gargoyle at the desk, the person who is supposed to greet you and check you in, who is rude and callous or disinterested or whatever, and how that has literally turned women I know around and had them walk out a door and not come back. So how do we begin to kind of get to the root and the core of this? And those of you who have known me for a long time will not be at all surprised to hear me say that I think a lot of this distills down to our unwillingness to accept that and to create opportunities for engagement. And I mean engagement on every possible level. I mean engagement in our own care and well-being and in the policies that impact us, but also engagement on the types of research that we want. When we talk about cure research, cure means different things to different people. And, what it means to be cured for some people is just, am I going to get to live a full life? That's close enough. That's good enough. And so I think that creating opportunities for our voices, none of us can represent our communities entirely. We all represent ourselves and our experiences, and to the best of our ability, we collect the stories and experiences of those around us. But, ultimately, at the end of the day, all of your voices are critical and essential and make a difference. I can talk till I'm blue in the face, but I am just one of the voices. So I do think that we have to kind of establish what we want and also what we need in terms of cure research. And that is not just about participating in the research, which is important. We won't get the answers without that. But it's about figuring out what the questions are. Like, what research do we want done? What answers do we need? And so that is, I'm grateful that Linda put it up and that Michael has now resurfaced the how to get involved with cabs. That's just one way. And I think that, when I talk to women from all over, not only this country, but outside of the US, what I hear the same things, like no one's ever really talked to them about your research. They are often unaware that there's anything being done near them or anything that they might be, potentially interested in. It isn't all about going off your treatment. There are lots of ways. I personally have been participating in some research that's basically just been blood draws so that they can, play around with this this virus that I've been dealing with for 35 years. So there are many, many ways in which we can all engage. Even, I don't even want to say even in small ways, because every opportunity to engage and participate is a contribution. It's a contribution to your well-being. It's a contribution to our general understanding. So I should never minimize any of that. But anyway, there's so many important things said on this panel, and I really appreciate Nina coming in from her vacation and talking about what it means to be a lifetime survivor. And I feel like, there are those of us who've been saying, does a person who's been living with HIV for 40 years, whether it was from birth or not, look somehow more similar than the person who, two people who are 60, one who's had it for 5 years and one who's had it for 40 years. So it's that, I think that is something that we have to talk about, and we have to talk about all the time. I'm going to be 55 in a couple of weeks. That was also never possible. So I'm with you on that. And I think that, the truth is we are a wildly fabulous bouquet of flowers, all different. We all bring something to this. And we're frankly more effective and stronger. I'm still old school. I still think we're better together, even acknowledging and supporting and celebrating our differences, but also looking for those places where the collection of our voices and our experiences is amplified and more than any of us can do on our own. So I'll stop there because I think that there might be some great questions. And again, I'm really grateful that this series has gone on and there's been so much engagement.
What a perfect last speaker, and what a great bunch. Thank you all so much. Really important stuff. I wanted to say something before we started, because Waheedah brought up a fabulous point about what happens if people are cured and their services disappear. And somebody wrote in the chat, well, you're still able to get some services if you're disabled. And I don't know what everybody's experiences are, but I was a lawyer in another life, and I've dealt with a lot of people that are really sick. And in order to get disability nowadays from the federal government, you have to be pretty much brain dead, and need somebody to take care of you in every aspect of your life. So I wouldn't count on that. But anyway, Michael, what's the chat looking like? And do you think we should go through the chat questions, or do you think we should let people pose some questions since we have time?
Let's let people raise their hand, and if they want to share something or ask something, let's do it that way, because there's so all over the map.
Okay, that sounds great. So do you want to deal with that, Michael?
Sure. William, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do.
Right.
I want to thank everybody for the invitation. And I found 2 new sheroes, well, 3, which is Shekinah, Dawn, and Dina. Waheedah, you're my heart. And it warms me to say it's because of me surviving and thriving with HIV since 1998 myself, and becoming a parent at that time. It was scary. I thought I was going to lose my kids because I hadn't completed my adoption at the time, so I didn't think the state was going to allow me to do it. But being in the right place at the right time and serving on different community advisory boards on how important that is, and being privileged to, I am the current chair of the BEAT. Waheedah was one of my predecessors, and I am currently on the CRISPR. Recently joined that with Jeff, and they having a blast being on there since they started, but officially as a member of the CAB now. And I like to say the importance of working in the community. I work with Waheedah in the community. We do community outreach, and that is so important. And because of that, the gentleman you see sitting beside me, he's a product of some of my community outreach and a prospective member of the BEAT CAB. And I am, for lack of a better word, targeting young people because my CAB is very well seasoned, but having someone that is not seasoned, that hasn't seen 35 is fabulous. And the cherry on top, him being an ally, he's not positive, but he's around me and doing things in the community and going there and seeing the needs. Because of my HIV, I've been able to start my own support group. I now work in the drug and alcohol recovery program and mixing and fusing my HIV background along with that and with mental health. But if we don't, as Shekinah said, we don't put that face on it and show them, and I'll tell them in a minute, this is what HIV looks like at 59. I swallow my pill 8 o'clock every morning. There's not a day that I don't. Because without it, I won't be able to see my grandkids. But being in the community and tearing down stigma is such a big honor to do that. And, with so many different organizations and just being here and hearing you ladies speak and knowing the things that I know, but seeing you guys actually putting your face out there and proudly saying that I'm HIV positive and this is who I am. I recently went to a storytellers conference here in Philadelphia, and there were 8 doctors there who proudly stood up and said they are not just doctors who are infectious disease doctors, but they are persons thriving with HIV. I almost fell out of my chair because that doesn't happen. They don't include themselves, but to say, I'm one of you and I understand it because I live it, and not be scared and have 8 of them in one room. I didn't know where I was at. I thought it was on another planet, because that just doesn't happen. Because I know some physicians would never tell, their status, but to hear that and be privileged to be a part of the HIV community and to work publicly now with Jeff. We're in the same city, Jeff and I. We're both here in Philadelphia. But to have our 2 cabs unintentionally together, we have the chair and the co-chair of the BEAT sits on the CRISPR for the Cures cab. So we work together, all as one, and there's no backbiting. This how we can come together for the cure. So I thank all of you all for doing what you do, because I think sometimes we forget what brought us here, that passion, but to still have it after all these years. Waheedah told me a long time ago, a couple of years ago, I told her I was following her footsteps. She told, don't follow my steps, make your own steps. Shine yourself, know your worth, accept who you are and be who you want to be. So to be able to see all of you people here doing that today, that keeps me encouraged. Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, William. Very good.
Michael, You have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just want to give us a little bit of feedback. Maybe I could be the devil's advocate or something for certain exclusion in cure clinical trials, because I've been following a lot of this for a while. I'm on several clinical trial teams with the ACTG, and we know that as you get older, your immune system wanes, and that's just fact. That's just part of getting older, and eventually you die. We also know that people, long-term survivors, have deeply embedded reservoirs, quote unquote. And so that there are some interventions where I think it's appropriate to see, to say, well, it's not that big of a trial. We want to see if this works in people who don't have that, or people's immune system are fully intact or more intact. So at least initially, we're going to see if this works. So therefore, we're going to have to exclude people above the age of whatever. And yeah, it would be very unfortunate if it's a very promising thing for younger people who are, if we didn't find a virtual cure for younger people because we didn't have enough, because we had older people in the trial, and it was too many to make something statistically significant. I think you get what I'm saying, but there are times, certain studies, where you want to do that. And then, sure, if you see something in younger people or not so long infected, then go ahead and see if it works in older people. Why not? So I think that's important to remember. And I had another point, but I can't remember, so I'll let that go.
Mike, you and I, you go ahead, finish, and I'll.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You go, finish up before you forget it again.
It was just something completely different, and I don't think we have time for it right now.
Okay. Michael, we spent a lot of time talking about this, and have lived through this. I mean, the same thing happened with HIV treatment, and it was like, okay, well, we can't make the drugs look bad, and we can't, ruin a drug's ability to help us if we try it in people that are too sick for it to really look like it's going to help, to make a long story short. And then, the same thing is happening in cure research. Well, we need people that are in the best shape because the drugs are very risky. And that is absolutely scientifically sound. But we can't forget about people that are people that have had HIV for a very long time, because most people that have HIV have had it for a very long time. And that number rises exponentially, and will continue to do that. So, I mean, we've really made it a priority to make sure that everybody is included, and when we talked about this series initially, a bunch of us worked together on this, and I think we had three things in mind to do it. Number one, to include as many people as possible, to make sure that we had a social science study, included in this. So, and what that social study is going to be, why can't I get that out today? What that behavioral, let's do it that way. What that behavioral study is going to be is having interviews and surveys with people that are over 65 who have been excluded from the study. So we know what they need and want and what's important to them, just like we've, got the answers to those questions for other people. And I think the other thing that we've done is we've included a language aspect of it that is just more generally. I think that the last thing is that, just for instance, on the DARE cabs on our annual meeting, I mean, we talked about, okay, this is the way it was in the past. And it's like deja vu. It's different, maybe different scientific, not even different scientific issues. I mean, how they say history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. Well, I think it does both. So, and the same things are happening here. So we have to be sure that, we're looking at all of this stuff all the time. So Dawn, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say, I think we are the next frontier in cure research, folks. There's all the proof of concept with, stem cell transplant and ablation and other, issues. That's kind of groundwork. But the next frontier is what happens to somebody who's been maximally suppressed on antiretroviral therapy for a decade or 2 decades or longer. And what does that mean? What does that look like in the reservoirs? What happens over time? I think that we are still early days in cure research, but our engagement is, I think, as important now as it has ever been, because ultimately there will be no cure if they can't figure out what to do with folks who have actually had measurable virus and been able to suppress over time. So that is something that I know many of us have been asking all of our researcher friends and colleagues for years. Is, okay, at what point do we start to see things look different? And so I would not lose interest or hope in our in the importance of our participation and engagement here. It's not peripheral. It's not like, oh, nice to throw the long-term survivors a bone. There's a lot to learn from our experience, and I think that there are going to be just more and more opportunities for us to be a part of that.
I saw that, Angela, you had your hand up once. Angela Smith, did you want to unmute and talk?
Okay. Good evening. I had the time wrong. I had it on my calendar as 1 o'clock by me on the West Coast. Yes, I've been living with HIV 33 years. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 33 years. And I've been I serve on the wine right board and the cab board here. And I just been doing a lot of work with HIV in the last 10 years. So yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, sure. So
Glad to have you.
Waheedah, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did, because I wanted to circle back. I said something earlier about mistrust that is in the Black community when it comes to medicine, research, and things like that. And I think that one of the things that's missing is that I don't see where the researchers are leaving any signature services in those communities where they get the answers from. You go to these communities, you want people to be on these trials, people participate in the trials, you give them I never thought it was enough money. They always say that you can't be coercive, but there's no signature service. There's no way for the person to stay connected with the institute, with the research, with the researchers themselves. And so people living with HIV want to be seen in our entire humanity, and that's important. And if even if it was a signature service as like an annual picnic where we could have a foot race against the researcher, for us to all know that that we're all human beings, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes we ask our researchers, they have to come outside of themselves. They have to come down from the clouds and come walk on this planet Earth like with the rest of us and be of some earthly good, and allow people living with HIV to feel human through your eyes. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we don't want to be engaged in the research because we don't want to be seen less than human. And the last thing I want to say is that as long-term survivors, we're the baby boomers of HIV. We never thought we're living in a world that has not been prepared for us. So like Dawn said, we're being, this is the next frontier. Yeah, we have the answers that you need. We need to be consulted. We need to be centered when you're doing the research. We need to know what the questions are from the beginning, not be there to answer the question, but to be there to help develop the questions, right? And how are they relevant to our quality of life, right? Because we're more than a CD4 count. We're much more than that. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to just kind of circle back and just talk about how the researchers can engage. William and I, we do engage the community on behalf of the CFAR. We've been doing that for about 3 years now, something like that, right? but it's not the same as when sometimes a researcher will come along with us as we're going to engage in the community. It's a whole different thing. Some people want to see the actual people that they see them through their eyes. They want to be seen through everybody's eyes. I know I want to be seen through everybody's eyes. First of all, as a person living, breathing with needs like everybody else needs, emotional needs, not just needs for medication, but I have emotional, social needs, right? So I just encourage the researchers to think about what are they leaving in the communities that they're getting this information from. They have to build up a rapport with the communities for communities who want to be involved, and so that's something that the researchers can do. That's something that we've been asking them to do for years, and I'm hoping that they will hear us to say that we want to know who you are. Do you have kids too? What kind of car do you drive? We just want to know. Like, we want you to see us as humans. We want to see you guys as humans as well. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
William, did you want to jump in?
Yes, I did. I wanted to touch on with Linda and what Waheedah was saying, making the medicines look good. We do that in holding the drug companies accountable. You're not going to come into my community, target me, make millions. If you're going to target my community, I want to see a person living with HIV as the director. I don't want to see a person acting as they have HIV. You don't need an actor. I live it. And I know plenty of other people who live it, who thrive it, who breathe it. And that is them. But also one of the beauties of, at least here in Philadelphia, I know and I'm speaking for the CRISPR and the beat, because I have asked the investigators to come out and go with me to different places. They do it. Do not be afraid of your investigators. You have to engage them because they forget. It's not taught community relations when they're in medical school. So we're the teachers. So if you aren't telling them, you're part of the problem. And some of the researchers have wonderful stories, on how they got into it. They've lost friends and they've changed the whole course of study because they lost a friend to HIV and AIDS. It's something. So if we don't change our thinking and stop having us and them and hold them accountable, no matter where they're at, because they don't know, because they're forgetting that they're speaking to us. Talk to us so we can understand. That's why we keep doing the same things, like the same work over and over. But each time that we tackle their issues, because as Waheedah stole my line, they were only want to invite us to the table. Forget that table, because I'm flipping it. Take me into the kitchen. Let's do it together. Don't ask me after you've already screwed it up. Then you want me to fix it. Then you want me to participate in the study. You don't want to worry about my partner who affects everything about his life, but you don't want to do a medical exam. You don't want to give him a cup of coffee. You don't want to do anything. You're a part of Will. No, he's a part of the study too, directly or indirectly. For my own personal thinking, it's directly. If it's affecting his life or her life, that's personal. But to not do that and to sit on so many different committees, Jeff and Michael will tell you, when we did about the committee talking about paying equal pay for people, that's something that should have took us 2 meetings. It took 2 years. That we all across the country had the same exact story. All of us can't be wrong, no matter where you're at. It doesn't make a difference how you got there. Stop asking me how I got HIV. I got it. Now let me help you find a cure. Let me help you market it. Let me tell you how it takes. Because if not, I say we invite them to swallow that pill, take that injection. Let's invite them to do it. Then they can tell us how it works for us. Because none of us are test dummies. We are people who want to take our medicine, who want to see a cure, how important research is, because we sometimes forget that years ago, people took hundreds of pills a day. I'm happy to take my one pill. I don't want an injection. I'm cool. But I don't mind taking my one pill, and I get to see my grandkids turn into teenagers. That's a beautiful thing, but that came from somebody who's a researcher, who's a mother or brother, who affects even the way that they eat. So all of us hold them researchers accountable, and they don't mind. At least the ones in Philadelphia don't. I'll speak for ours over here that I know. So keep doing it, everybody. Thank you.
Jen, I see that you have your hand up. Would you like to share? And then I also see you, Jeff, and I see you, Shekinah. I just want to let you know I see you.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback and comment on a lot of the awesome information I'm hearing about our concern with the researchers and how they engage with us as participants. And the last week, I had the opportunity to participate in a trauma-informed care research session. So the talk is there about how the researchers are engaging with us as human beings. It's just a matter of us continuing to have that talk with them and reminding them, as it was say, hey, we're human, you know, we drive a car too, you know, we have kids too. So I just want to encourage us to keep doing what we're doing, because the discussion is happening. I guess I should have started off by saying good morning, California time, good afternoon, East Coast time. My name is Jen Lothridge. I am probably the baby of the bunch. I've been living with my best friend, HIV. Next month will be 5 years. So I am learning a lot. However, I am, because it's not my will, I'm going to school for social work, and my minor is gerontology. So aging is definitely on my radar. And then in regards to research, I understand that there is a lot of medical distrust, and, you know, for the things that have been done in the past in research, it does cause us to be a little iffy. However, after I became diagnosed with HIV and started engaging, I learned that there are not enough individuals, African American, females, and in general, that are participating in studies. And so I've been on this thing about spreading the word of the importance of participating in a study, because how is the provider going to take care of me if they don't have enough information about me? So that's why we need more women of color, more Latinas, more Asian, because HIV doesn't discriminate. So because of that, we need to really help individuals understand the importance of participating in research, because it's not only going to help us, you know, for the most part now, it's going to help our generations to come. You know, everything that we're doing now, we may not be able to reap the benefits of it right away, but while there are individuals aging with HIV, unfortunately, there are individuals that are still being diagnosed every day. So because of that, we need to continue pushing the importance of participating in research and clinical trials, so that we can help take care of our next generations to come. That's all.
Thank you, Miss Jen. Jeff.
Don't forget to fill out the survey, please, everybody. It's very helpful to hear what you have to say about the sessions. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you. And thanks for that comment, Ms. Jen. That's so important. You know, I just want to echo what I think was in the chat earlier about how we still need to continue to advocate for people first language and non-stigmatizing language in the cure space. I just saw a paper today, you know, people who are HIV infected, in this abstract. And I saw it in a report a couple of weeks ago from a, treatment writer that's been doing this for years, and it's still happening. So we just need to keep advocating for this. The other thing about language justice that Moisés brought up, so important. I love what you said, Moisés, about how we're not doing people a favor. It's their right to have, language justice. And so, we at the Reunion Project have been, committed to that. And we're it's amazing how it shifts the entire conversation and the perspective of not only people who are on the receiving end, but people who are also, I've learned so much about language justice just in the past year that it's like, it's like a no-brainer. So, but there's the funding part of it. So we got to keep advocating for that. And then, also, Nina, thank you so much for your points. I think, when we talk about lifetime survivors, I don't know if there's anyone seen Allison Agu's presentations, but she does a really great, she has a great slide on people living with HIV long-term around the globe. And, I think it's like 1% here of people living with HIV were diagnosed as, at birth or in early adolescence here in the US, but globally, I think it's closer to 10%. And when you look at the sheer numbers, you're talking millions of people. And so when we talk about lifetime survivors, we have to think about this is a global issue. And it's an opportunity, I think, for us to think about research in a different way, but also providing care and treatment and the issues that are affecting the population that are unique and that, really need to be addressed. And your comment about aging as a privilege is spot on. I totally agree. And then just the last thing I wanted to say is that HIV, cure would be great if it happens in my lifetime. But HIV is not going to cure my chronic inflammation. HIV isn't going to cure the comorbidities that I have. HIV cure, if it happens, it's not going to cure all the underlying issues that have been talked about here today: the racism, the structural inequities, the barriers to care, the transportation, the housing, the food insecurity, all the different social determinants of health that are barriers that made HIV possible in the first place. If we cure HIV and don't address those other issues, I feel like we're just waiting for another virus to come along and take HIV's place. So while we're working on HIV cure, we need to be thinking about all of those other things and acting on them and working on them.
Shekinah, then Jeff, and then Huldah.
Thank you, Jen and William, for your comments. At USCHA this year, there was a presentation on language offered on the very last day. One of the presenters, I believe her name is Nicole Smith or Sampson, I can't remember which, but she coined a phrase that I hadn't been introduced to, and it changed my life. I hope it kind of changes yours. Language access, which is our ability to receive information in whatever form, however it needs to arrive, right? If language access and language justice are not happening, in other words, if it's not lining up for a person that needs to have how they receive information in a way that's properly shared in a first person, it's actually language violence. And the whole presentation was really powerful. And the way that she made the separation and difference, she was a trans woman. She identified as being trans. And so often we equate trauma in the picture. in terms of misgendering, whatever it may be that creates for the language justice issue. And sometimes for some people, trauma is a part of that byproduct because it can be repetitive. And so she's flipped the switch and she's changed it into calling it for what it is, and that's language justice. I'm going to move on to the next comment. In a lot of the spaces that I am like really glad to be in, I'm often talking to researchers, trying to share in a way questions that really kind of open up their minds to really recognizing the need to value us. Instead of talking at them, talk with them in a way that they really kind of get what I'm saying. And in that moment, I'm finding researchers are showing up and being humbled. They're being humbled, which goes to being heard, right? So it's my desire and hope that through consistently doing that wherever I am, we're developing allies. The more that I'm able to share in this way, researchers are actually taking it on board, and we're starting to see a shift, I think, in the way research is being done. And hopefully they too can start to advocate for us. We're all in this together, and it would be really nice to think that with all the comments that have been made about researchers, that they too can become allies.
Michael, what about you? What would you like to say about all of this before we go, especially the language part of it? I know that you're working so hard on.
Yeah, I wanted to hear from Hulda. I'm
Okay.
waiting, so I wanted to get that there. And I've just shared the results of the poll if you all want to see.
Yeah,
Hulda,
that'd be great.
it's your turn.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Hulda. 32 years ago, at the age of 47, was when I was diagnosed with HIV. I'm 79 years old, which means I'm not a baby boomer. I was born before the baby boom, the silent generation, the don't ask, don't tell generation. So my question is this: how do we get our seniors, even people my age, at the age of 79, how do we get our seniors to participate more in the research studies so we can know what's going on with us too? I understand they were supposed to have raised the age of research studies from 61 to 75, but that still leaves me out. Now, I may be old, but that don't mean I don't want to live. I want to live just like everybody else. So live to the best of my ability and know what to do just in case something happens. How do I go back to my youngsters, to the people that the younger, everyone is younger than me, but how do I go back to the people who are younger than me and explain to them how I feel? Because I know they're not going to understand. They haven't gotten there yet. They haven't lived it yet. I'm living this. How do we get our seniors to come out and talk to our youngsters so we can get them to understand that when they get there, they don't have to suffer as much?
Good questions.
Well,
Jeff
I
Taylor.
kind of raised.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Waheedah. Go ahead.
I kind of raised my hand when Hilda kind of posed that as a question. I saw it as a question, and the first thing I thought that we are our own best advocates, and the messenger does matter.
Yeah,
The messengers matters when we go. We need to have a pool of folks working with researchers that look like the people that you're trying to reach. The messengers matter. It matters if I'm an older person talking to a younger group. Maybe you need to send a younger person. It matters if I'm a Black person talking to a white group or vice versa. Sometimes people can relate better to people who they feel like they have a some kind of connection with. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's to get because I'm a senior myself, to get the seniors out. And so I'm able to talk to seniors, I'm able to talk to women, I'm able to talk to a few different groups. And so I wear a lot of different hats. So you put the hat on that you need for the time. But I really think that that if we are in cabs, we can get to these researchers, and sometimes they have to come with us. It's not just us showing up. Because like when Will and I go out, we get in the car and we ride and we go to some of the worst places you ever want to see. And sometimes Will tell you, I'll be like, y'all go ahead. I'm not getting out the car. You know? And I'll be like, I said, I'll be here to tell the story, because some places we go are like really horrified. But we have to go where the people are. And for those researchers who go with us, we take them to where these people are so they can see what our experience is and how we're connecting with the people. But again, I'm going to just say the messenger matters. So we can be our own best advocates. If we're in a cab, we'll have access to those researchers and become somebody who can carry their message out into the community and sometimes carry them with us.
Well, the question is, how do you get the white hair into the cab?
I can speak to that.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, so we've been seeing the post in the chat about how to join a cab. So there are two places where aging research gets done in clinical trials, and that's here in the Delaney Collaboratories that is sponsoring this. And there's some in every major city, and they have collaborators all over the world. And also the AIDS Clinical Trials Group, the ACTG. I think Averitt just put something in recently. And so they've been doing, AIDS research, AIDS treatment research from the beginning. And they too have a very active, they call it a community scientific subcommittee. And both these places, the whole idea is for the community members to be in there from the beginning. Somebody was talking about being not just at the table, but in the kitchen, coming up with the ideas, coming up with the recipes. What do people need? What are we going to serve? What are we going to make for them? That's where this happens. And then they serve on the protocol teams to make sure that when they're designing these studies, they're done in a way that people will actually show up for, right? If you're not asking too much or unreasonable things, that the inclusion and exclusion criteria, and we're fighting this battle all the time. We don't think there should be any. There should be no upper age limit, because people live, very famously, the Lisbon patient lived to be 100, living with HIV, and, and God willing, Hilda and the rest of us will be up there too someday. And so everybody's going to be old, right? By the time we get a cure, it's probably going to be another 10 or 20 years. Everybody's going to be old who needs this cure. So it needs to work for us and for everyone. So I think it's really important to know that that's out there, and just wanted to elevate the participation part. I know we're coming to the end of our time, but wanted to be able to end that. So thank you.
So Michael, let's give you the last word. You've worked so hard on this series. I mean, with the backbone of this stuff, the tech and all the beautiful flyers and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, last words. Sometimes it seems like it's a fight. Sometimes it feels like it's a dance. And I hope that we all have the grace to make it more like a dance, at least from our end, even if we're in the middle of a fight. Because I think having that grace for ourselves and for each other will make it a beautiful thing. That's what I just hope. It's a fight, but I want to make it into a dance. And I want it to be more like West Side Story than a real rumble. So that's what I'm hoping from research, is that we make this to be a graceful thing. And so I don't know if that summarizes it in a good way, but I really am hoping that I don't have to fight as much and that I can actually boogie a little bit and enjoy myself.
That's great, Michael. So stay tuned, everybody, for we're going to start next year with the Viral Reservoir series. And Jeff, before we go, Jeff Taylor, you want to say a word about the last gift series session that we're going to have next month?
Yes. So the last gift study is at UCSD. And just really briefly, what it is a study of people at the end of life, people living with HIV who've gotten a terminal diagnosis 6 months or less. And the idea is to put them in this study, get their medical history, take blood samples and stuff. And then when they die, they agree to donate their body to science for a rapid autopsy. And this is really important because there've been lots of, different studies over the year where you can donate your body to science. But often it happens too late and the cells aren't harvested And the
Mhm.
tissues, we don't get them soon enough for them to be really useful for cure research and the things that we need to be looking at now. So the whole idea is to do it within 6 hours of death. It's an incredibly, it's an amazing study. Just putting all that together is incredible. And we're going to have the researchers come and talk to that, along with Corinne Dubé, the socio-behavioral researcher we've been talking about a lot today, who's really, I mean, talk about a study that has a lot of, human components, right? People at the end of life and their families and everything. And she's done a brilliant job of doing that. And then while I've got the floor, one more kind of add-on we're doing to this series is going to be on long-term non-progressors. We hear about people who've managed to cure HIV who never had to do anything, right? They didn't have to have stem cell transplant, take pills. Their own body miraculously did it. There are 2 people, the City of Hope patient, not City of Hope, I'm sorry, San Francisco patient, Lorraine Willenberg, who many of us have known over the years, and then the Esperanza patient in Argentina are the 2 people. So we're delighted that Lorraine Willenberg is going to join us, along with Stephen Migueles, a researcher at NIH who's been studying long-term non-progressors in Lorraine's case, and that's going to be on December 13th. So we'll be sending out something shortly. It just got confirmed this morning from the NIH side. So you're the first
What
to hear.
about the long-term survivor date, Jeff? Excuse me, long-term survivor. The last gift date.
I don't have that in front of me.
Okay. All right. So I have this, we'll talk about that and we'll get something out to people.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. All the people that spoke and people that spoke number of times and all the participants who have really, I mean, we'd be talking to ourselves without you. So thank you all for your loyalty and for your support. So have a great Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you back in December for a different topic.
Bye.
Bye.
Take good care of yourselves,
Bye,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone
Take
for an
Bye.
excellent
Thanks,
webinar.
Thanks for the balloons, Larry.
care.
Thank you.